Imagine a time long, long ago. We're in the year 550 BC. In a land we now call Iran, a brilliant leader was about to change the world. His name was Cyrus the Great. He was the king of a small kingdom called Persia. But Cyrus had big dreams. He didn't just want to rule a small piece of land. He wanted to build something massive, something incredible. He started by uniting different Persian tribes. Then, he looked at the powerful empires around him. He saw them as opportunities, not threats. His vision was to create a new kind of empire, one built not just on power, but on respect. Cyrus was a military genius. He led his armies with skill and courage. One by one, he conquered the great kingdoms of his time. First came the Median Empire, then the wealthy kingdom of Lydia. Finally, he set his sights on the legendary city of Babylon. In 539 BC, his army marched into the city, not as brutal conquerors, but as liberators. The people of Babylon welcomed him. Cyrus did something amazing. He freed the Jewish people who had been held captive there. He even helped them return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. This act of kindness was unheard of in the ancient world. Cyrus's empire became known as the Achaemenid Empire. It was the first Persian empire, and it grew at an incredible speed. Think of a map of the ancient world. Cyrus's conquest stretched from the Mediterranean Sea in the west all the way to the Indus River in the east. It covered parts of modern-day Turkey, Egypt, and even into Central Asia. It was at that time the largest empire the world had ever seen. Can you picture it? A single ruler in charge of a vast territory linking continents and connecting countless different peoples. It was truly a global superpower of its day. What made Cyrus so special was his unique style of ruling. He believed in tolerance and respect for the people he conquered. He didn't force them to adopt Persian customs or religion. Instead, he allowed them to keep their own traditions, worship their own gods, and speak their own languages. This revolutionary idea made him loved by many of his subjects. He created a famous Declaration of Human Rights known as the Cyrus Cylinder. This clay cylinder tells the story of his victory and his policies of freedom. It is a powerful symbol of his legacy as a just and wise ruler. After Cyrus the Great, other powerful kings took the throne and made the empire even greater. One of the most famous was Darius I, also known as Darius the Great. Darius was a master organizer. He knew that ruling a massive empire was a huge challenge. How do you control so much land and so many different people? Darius came up with a brilliant system. He divided the huge empire into smaller regions. Each region was called a satrapy. This made it much easier to manage everything. He was like the CEO of a giant ancient corporation, making sure every department ran smoothly and efficiently. Each satrapy was governed by a man called a satrap. The satrap was like a local governor. His job was to collect taxes, keep the peace, and raise soldiers for the king's army. But Darius was clever. He didn't want the satraps to become too powerful and rebel against him. So he put a system of checks and balances in place. He sent special inspectors known as the king's eyes and ears to travel throughout the empire. These spies would report back to Darius to make sure the satraps were doing their jobs properly and staying loyal to the crown. It was a smart way to keep control. To connect his vast empire, Darius built an incredible network of roads. The most famous of these was the Royal Road. It was a superhighway of the ancient world. The road stretched for an amazing 2,700 kilometers, from the city of Susa in Persia, all the way to Sardis in modern-day Turkey. Along the road there were stations with fresh horses for royal messengers. A message could travel from one end of the empire to the other in just 7 days. This was astonishingly fast for the time. It allowed the king to send orders and receive news quickly, holding the empire together. Another important king was Xerxes I, the son of Darius. You might have heard of him from the famous story of the 300 Spartans. Xerxes led a massive invasion of Greece. He built a pontoon bridge made of boats across a strait called the Hellespont, allowing his huge army to march from Asia into Europe. Although he had some famous victories like burning the city of Athens, his invasion ultimately failed. The Greeks managed to defeat his forces in key battles. Xerxes' story shows the immense power and ambition of the Persian kings, but also the limits of their reach when faced with determined resistance. The Persian Empire wasn't just big in size, it was also huge in its diversity. So many different cultures, languages, and religions existed side by side. The Persians were masters of cultural tolerance. Unlike other empires that forced their beliefs on conquered peoples, the Persians celebrated diversity. This policy, started by Cyrus the Great, made the empire strong and stable. People were more likely to be loyal to a king who respected their way of life. It was a true melting pot, where ideas, art, and traditions from Egypt, Babylon, India, and Greece all mixed together. The main religion of the Persians themselves was a faith called Zoroastrianism. It was one of the world's first monotheistic religions, meaning they believed in one main god. Their god was named Ahura Mazda, who represented truth and light. They believed in a constant struggle between good and evil, light and darkness. This religion taught its followers to live by the principles of good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Zoroastrianism had a big influence on other major religions that came later, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, especially with its ideas of heaven, hell, and a final judgment day. With so many different languages spoken across the empire, how did everyone communicate? The Persians had a smart solution. They adopted Aramaic as the official language of government and administration. Aramaic was already widely used for trade in the region, so many people were familiar with it. This meant that a government official in Egypt could easily send a message to an official in India, and they would both understand it. It was like having a universal language for business and politics, which helped the massive empire run like a well-oiled machine, connecting everyone together. This cultural mixing was best seen in Persian art and architecture. The Persians borrowed the best ideas from all the cultures they ruled. They took inspiration from the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Greeks. You can see this in the magnificent city of Persepolis. This grand ceremonial capital was built to impress. The carvings on its walls show people from all over the empire, from Ethiopia to India, bringing gifts to the king. It was a powerful visual statement. It showed that all these different nations were united under the peaceful rule of the great Persian king, living together in harmony. The greatest symbol of Persian power and wealth was the city of Persepolis. This was not an ordinary city where lots of people lived. It was a spectacular ceremonial capital, built by Darius the Great and expanded by his successors like Xerxes. Imagine massive palaces set on a huge stone terrace with grand staircases and towering columns reaching for the sky. The city was designed to awe visitors and show the world the glory of the Persian Empire. Every year, representatives from all the satrapies would travel to Persepolis to pay tribute to the king in a huge festival. It was the ultimate display of imperial grandeur. The engineering skills of the Persians were incredible. The builders of Persepolis created a complex system of water and drainage channels underneath the city. The columns in the great halls were so tall and slender, a marvel of ancient construction. The walls were covered in beautiful and detailed carvings called reliefs. These carvings weren't just for decoration, they told stories. They showed the king's power, the might of his army, and the unity of the diverse peoples within his empire. Persepolis was a masterpiece of art, architecture, and propaganda, built to last for eternity and proclaim the king's greatness. For over 200 years, the Persian Empire was the dominant power in the world. It was a center of culture, innovation, and stability. Its system of government, its roads, and its policy of tolerance were ahead of their time. The empire connected the East and the West, allowing for a rich exchange of goods and ideas that shaped the course of history. It was a golden age, a period of incredible achievement that left a lasting mark on civilization. But as with all great empires, its time would eventually come to an end. An ambitious new leader was rising in the West. The end came swiftly and unexpectedly. A young and brilliant king from Macedonia named Alexander the Great launched an invasion of Persia in 334 BC. Alexander was a military prodigy, and his highly disciplined army won a series of stunning victories against the much larger Persian forces. He defeated the last Persian king, Darius III, in decisive battles. In 330 BC, Alexander's army reached Persepolis. In a final, tragic act, the magnificent city was burned to the ground. The fire marked the end of the Achaemenid Empire. Though the empire fell, its incredible legacy of culture, governance, and ideas would echo through the centuries.